Okay, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for signing up to these webinar series, and I hope you really enjoy them and get a lot out of them. Tonight, I'm going to be talking about naturopathic techniques. These are something that I recommend a lot and talk about quite a lot with my clients and in events that I do. So a webinar about them all is a good place to start, I think. So a little bit about me. Many of you know me, some of you don't. I'm based in Norfolk. I'm a naturopathic nutritionist, which means that I am a nutritional therapist who was taught in a naturopathic way. We went into a little bit about what that means in the last webinar I did. And below is just a little list of some of the things I see in clinic. I see a lot more things, but these are some of the main issues that people come to me with. Stick around at the end. I've got a little secret bonus. If you watch the last webinar, you'll know what that is. So we'll find out more about that at the end. So last month, I was talking about naturopathic nutrition and what it is, what it's about. If you didn't catch that, then there's a link here, or it is in the blog section of my website. So you can watch that again. So last month we went through what the naturopathic principles are, and this is really, forms the basis of what being a naturopathic nutritionist should be about. Really taking on these principles in practice and when seeing clients. So, we've got the healing power of nature, identifying and treating the cause, which is, huge. A lot of times, not just conventional medicine, but other modalities, other sort of alternative therapies. They're just sort of going for the symptom rather than the actual cause, which is often harder to find, but is the ultimate goal. First, do no harm. Doctor as teacher. That really is what I'm doing now is all about. It's really about educating people, giving them the tools that they can use to live a healthier life. Ultimately, that is the goal. Treating the whole person. This is a really big key thing of what we do, is rather than just looking at that one place in the body where that person is experiencing a specific symptom, we're looking at the whole body and what's going on, what's out of balance, what can we tweak to really get the body back into balance and get everything sort of healing and working better. And of course, prevention, because at the end of the day, we want to prevent illness, we want to live healthily. That is the ultimate goal. So naturopathy is centered around the belief that the body needs to be able to rid itself of toxins or effectively throw them off. And to do this in the most efficient and safe way, the body's elimination pathways must be clear and working optimally. And so what we mean by that is that the toxins that we have in our body, now these toxins may be from our past, from exposure to certain chemicals or heavy metals, that may be in our drinking water, things that we are exposed to on a regular basis. They get stored in our body. It is an inevitable part of life. So we really, trying to minimize that by eating more healthily, trying to avoid pesticides, chemicals in your cleaning products, in your personal care products, etc., minimizes those toxins on the body that the body has to deal with, right? And so the elimination pathways are the route out, the way that the body gets these things out. And if they are blocked, so for example, your bowel is a major elimination pathway. If you have constipation, that is something that's blocking that from happening. And so you're going to have problems because those toxins aren't going to find a way out. They're going to be going back into the body, redisperse. We then get symptoms. Quite often what we get then is things coming out on the skin because the body needs to find another way to get it out. You know, or even your lungs, and you getting, you know, sort of infections and things going on happening in your lungs. So we have ways to assist this elimination process. You want to support your liver. You know, when I say this, quite often people don't really know what that looks like. You know, a really good alternative sort of thing that people use quite often or know about is milk thistles, really good for your liver. You know, what we mean by this is, when we say support, is giving our body that extra bit of support to help it do the things it needs to do, because unfortunately we do live in a more toxic environment than we ever have, and humans ever have. You know, we are consuming more toxic things, we are putting more toxic things onto our skin, we are breathing in more toxins, you know, we are drinking more toxins. So any way that we can support that elimination process is going to mean that your body is healthier. So, you know, another way is avoiding hormonal contraception. You know, when we're another route of elimination is via the womb if you're a female. And so, you know, stopping that from happening every month is again going to be having an impact. Plus hormonal contraception has other impacts on the body as well, you know, namely in the gut, but that's another thing. You know, there are, if we can avoid these things, again, you know, it's about creating the most healthy and natural environment for our bodies to exist in. Again, addressing any constipation, you know, and this is a classic in terms of root cause. You know, why is that constipation happening? It's all very well putting in something that's going, you know, a laxative or something, but that's going to stop. Yes, that's going to help the constipation, but it's not going to actually address why it's there in the first place. So, you know, that's a real classic in sort of root cause. You know, thinking about using non-toxic skin products. You know, again, that it's going, your skin is the largest organ, it's going to be absorbed into your body. You know, we have the rule, if you wouldn't want to eat it, don't put it on your skin. And, you know, how many things do people have that they certainly wouldn't want to eat? You know, thinking about really proper quality hydration, you know, filtering your water, minimal diuretics. Diuretics are things that we consume that make fluid come out of our body more quickly. So that is caffeine, that is sugar, that is alcohol, and also stress. Stress is a huge diuretic. So, you know, trying to help our bodies deal better with stress will help here. And then in terms of, you know, sort of your lungs and stuff, smoking, vaping is going to have an impact. You know, breathing through your nose, your nose has a filter, your mouth doesn't. You know, really concentrating on that. There's other good reasons to breathe through your nose, but, you know, you don't want to be breathing potential toxic, you know, air, or, you know, it right into your lungs. It's going to have an impact. Trying to avoid chemical fragrances, air fresheners in the house, you know, even scented candles, things like that. And, you know, you could always consider an air purifier, especially if there's any signs of mold or anything in your house. So just going to do a little bit about our lymphatic system, something that a lot of people aren't really aware of. We release toxins from the cells in our body out into the extracellular matrix that exists around the cells. This then goes into the lymph, which I'll talk a bit about later, more about later, and then into our blood. From there, it goes to our liver, and then to the bile, and then out into our bowels. So unlike the circulatory system, which is, you know, where our blood is pumped, the lymphatic system, which exists alongside this, has no pump. So therefore it is often we often need to support this area to assist, especially as it is so vital in this release of toxins. And we're going to talk a bit more about this in a minute. So, you know, here is a little list of what your lymphatic system does. It fights infections, it filters your blood, it drains excess fluid, it transports fats from digestion, supports your immunity, balances fluids in your body, removes waste products, helps with your health of your heart. It helps to regulate inflammation in the body, and it aids in wound healing. You know, so a lot going on there. You know, it's really an area that could do with a lot of support. And when the lymphatic system becomes overly stressed and stagnated, you know, if it's not being moved, if it's not being supported, then these toxins and the dead cellular material that's coming out of the cells builds up. And this is where we can see that symptoms can occur. And a toxic or stagnated lymphatic system will keep you sick and swollen. And, you know, just to put it into perspective, here is a lovely list of all of the things that are associated with a sluggish lymphatic system, you know, so it's quite a list. I'm not going to read it all out. You can see it all there. You know, there are a lot of things going on there. And, you know, obviously these can relate to other things as well. But I think when we have these issues, you know, really thinking about our lymphatic system, which, like I said, it's often not thought about, you know, it's a neglected sort of system in the body. And, you know, just going, okay, right, I've got allergies. I'll try this. Let's see how that works. Let's see if it lessens the symptoms. So, you know, toxins and infections can also trigger lymphatic system. You know, we have a lot of parasites, you know, potential parasites that we're exposed to, you know, that you don't have to have been abroad for you to have a parasite. Even if you have had stool tests through your GP and they haven't detected parasites, you know, they're testing potentially 4 parasites out of, you know, thousands. So it is quite a common thing. It's not something necessarily to worry about unless we are getting, you know, the sort of bowel symptoms and gut issues, and then that's something we might want to be saying, okay, is there parasites going on here? Heavy metals, you know, when I say that, I mean things like amalgam fillings, you know, that is going to be having an impact on your body. Aluminium, you know, things in the water, you know, there's various places using aluminium tin foil, you know, things like this are ways that these heavy metals can get into our body, and you know, that is a toxic thing. Pesticides, obviously that's coming from, you know, the veg we eat if it's not organic, but also, you know, thinking about, you know, things like swimming in rivers, which is an absolutely lovely thing to do, except for the fact that, especially where we live, is very rural. There is a lot of farmland. That farmland is probably sprayed with chemicals. Those chemicals will be running off into the rivers. Unfortunately, that is just a sad fact of the state of our rivers. So, you know, swimming in a river, even if it is flowing, it's going to have an impact. It's going to be absorbed into your skin. You know, that is just the fact of what we're having to put up with now, you know. Epstein-Barr virus, which is also called glandular fever. This is something that, you know, often people have this when they're younger. That virus can often stay in the body for years, and it can really, you know, can cause problems, and people are, you know, often are aware of that. What we call endocrine disruptors, and these are often in things like plastic, and they are disrupting your hormone system. So they are, I mean, and it's often normally women this affects, because these things are mimicking estrogen, and so they are causing an excess of estrogen symptoms in your body from a chemical source. So that is, you know, thinking about swapping your plastic water bottle for something that isn't plastic, really making sure that if you're storing things in plastic, you don't put them in there when they're hot. You don't microwave things in plastic, because as it heats up, that plastic is transferring into your food and you are consuming that. Bacterial infections, this can, come from many sources, could be in your gut, could just be in your body. Molds and mycotoxins, molds, this can be in your house, unfortunately. And, tick-borne illnesses, often people are unaware if they have issues from that might have happened years ago. So looking at ways to boost your immune system and support healthy lymphatic system, one of the main things that we look at is making sure we're properly hydrated, because we want to get this flowing. We want to have minimize that stagnation. And often people say, well, I drink loads of water, which you may do, but then you're also might be having 6 coffees a day. That is going to increase how much water is coming out of you because of that diuretic action. So, even if you are drinking water, are you sort of balancing it out with that, lessening the diuretics? Really you want to be thinking about filtering your water. You really do. It's one of the main things I recommend nowadays. I'm really into this Fox water filter. You might have seen it advertised. It's in a glass it's in a glass jug. It's the cartridges you use, you can refill. They do a deal where you get a 12-month supply, and it comes in at £61.50, which I think is a pretty good price. And personally, depends. That they say they last X amount of time, but generally these things last longer, because that they might be working on the basis of a large family, and you might not be. So I certainly know that in my area, there's a lot of chlorine in the water. I can really smell it. So when it's not working, you can really smell the difference. So other ways to boost your lymphatic system is really thinking about daily walks, getting that movement in your body, infrared saunas, Epsom salt baths. We're going to talk about all of these in a minute. Having a specific lymphatic drainage massage. A lot of massage therapists, actually offer this service nowadays. Deep breathing, limiting your alcohol, really thinking about how well you're sleeping, how many hours. At the end of the day, if you've been on your feet, for a long time, elevating your legs can be really helpful. And avoiding wearing tight clothing all the time, because that can really hinder the way that lymph is flowing. Other ways to support are different herbal teas and herbal sort of, however way you would like to use it. You can make a sort of tea, or you could have that in your bath, or however you would like that, or a tincture maybe, and incorporating ginger, which is a great spice, into your diet, and this really does promote that sort of circulation of everything, getting everything moving, and really reducing any inflammation in the body. And then again, what I was talking about earlier, really thinking about reducing your toxic load. Like I said, we live in a more toxic environment. So whatever we can do in our own little ecosystems to minimize that is, a really good thing. If you live in a polluted area, you live in a polluted area, but maybe think about getting, air filters, or even having plants in your house, to really sort of think about filtering the air. Not cooking with non-stick pans, Teflon coated pans, really toxic, especially if they're scratched. That really is going into your food, not a good thing. Not wrapping food in cling film. and storing in plastic containers. You know, you can store in glass instead. But, you know, if you have to, then like I said, just don't put it in there when it's warm. Don't heat it up. You know, thinking about changing your personal care products to more sort of organic and natural versions. Household cleaners, you know, what I say with people is, if there is, you know, quite often there is not really the great alternative, you know, well, maybe just use it less. Buy a more natural one, use that the majority of the time, use the more chemical one, you know, less of the time. So you're having less of an impact, you know. And really the most important thing is that the body is eliminating these toxins, you know, really on a daily basis. Because if these toxins aren't eliminated, then they start to build up in the body, and this creates what we would call disease. And, you know, one of that I've put in here, getting ill. You know, obviously, if you're getting ill a lot of times, you know, over and over again, that there's issues there. But we really do need to be getting ill, you know, a couple of times a year, because that is our body getting rid of those toxins. And when I hear people say, oh, you know, I haven't been ill for 10 years, you just think that you know, that there isn't that movement. You know, getting ill is a sign that our body is getting rid of these things. You know, it's having a cleanse of its own, you know, of its own volition. So, you know, I think sort of not getting ill can be a bit of a badge of honor, but actually we really do need this sometimes. You know, it really is important. You know, so this is what we looked at last month with the naturopathic nutrition. Just going to go through this, you know, sort of skim through this again. But, you know, with naturopathic nutrition, we are considering many aspects to aid in this healing process. You know, it isn't just about food, it isn't just about what you're eating. You know, we're really looking at using natural healing, you know, methods in our clients. We really want to be looking at getting to the root cause of things. And, you know, these are some of the things that we can help with. We're also using natural healing methods. So we want to be looking at, you know, unprocessed foods, eating wild fish, filtering our water. You know, if we're eating meat, it wants to be grass-fed, which, you know, I say this a lot, and I think people just don't really know that, unfortunately, a lot of the meat that we consume or that is in the supermarket, it isn't from a grass. Those animals haven't been eating grass. You know, it's a horrible fact, but that is the fact, you know. So really, I mean, Lidl now actually do a grass-fed beef range, which I think is fantastic, you know. Not many supermarkets do that, you know, specifically saying that the meat is grass-fed. So, you know, look into that. You know, you do want to, I know that organic is more expensive, but, you know, trying to swap in, you know, just here and there, I would say certainly with fruit and things that are more likely to be open to, you know, pests and therefore sprayed more. You know, and also looking at, I mean, there's a company south of Norwich called Tilia Veg, a small farm. Obviously, you know, they've only got what's in season, but they don't grow with any pesticides. So it's not organic, but, you know, it's taking out the pesticides. That's what we want. So it doesn't matter, you know, and buying our veg from somewhere like that as well, we are going to get what's seasonal. It is going to be local, which again is, you know, a real big bonus. And then also, you know, having in quality supplements, you know, unfortunately, you know, they are needed these days. Our veg just, our food overall just does not have the nutrients in that I mean, 50 years ago that you know, food had. So, you know, using targeted quality supplements is a very, very useful tool. You know, it really is. And, you know, we're going to look into this in a minute, but using naturopathic techniques, things like castor oil, skin brushing, saunas, you know, really trying to get that healthy detoxification, having Epsom salt baths, and using linseed tea for hydration. Right, so we're just going to have a little look at skin brushing. Some of you may do this already. you know, there's a little caveat to this. You really shouldn't do it if you've got severe constipation, because you know what skin brushing is doing is stimulating that lymphatic system, so it will be stimulating those toxins to come out. And if you've got constipation, they're not going to have that route of elimination, so you know you're going to cause more problems. You know, if you've got sluggish liver, which you may not know what that means, but you know, that's something you want to maybe talk to me about. You know, if you've got real issues and symptoms, then maybe skin brushing isn't something you want to incorporate. You don't want to be doing it if you're pregnant or if you've got heart problems. If you've got things like varicose veins and, you know, sort of rashes and wounds and stuff, or eczema and psoriasis, you just, you know, maybe be careful, or, you know, wait until these things have healed. And, you know, we're doing this for like 5 minutes a day. It's not, you know, we're not doing it for a huge amount of time. The gentle friction causes the blood to move to the surface of the skin, which in turn pulls the lymph and thus increases lymphatic movement. So you want to make sure your body is dry, and you can do this right before or right after a shower or a bath. So you want to sit down and start at the soles of your feet, so from the heel pad to your toes, and brush with quick, soft strokes, you know, sort of like you're whisking, taking care not to press too hard, sort of going over, so you're doing like sort of 5 strokes at a time. The lymphatics are stimulated without the need of pressure, and using soft strokes, but the skin should be stimulated, so you should be able to feel it. So a bit like this. You always want to start at your legs, and you always want to be going upwards towards your heart. So once you get above your heart, then you're brushing down towards, so it's always towards your heart, if that makes sense. You don't want to overbrush, and you may want to begin slowly and just, you know, see how you feel basically before, you know, incorporating into a daily routine. Another thing we can do is hot and cold showers. You know, these sort of work in the same way. After you've had your wash, the shower is turned down to a cold blast. Many of you might do this already, you know, just for a few seconds, but you then want to have that alternating from hot to cold. And, you know, because it's the change in the temperature that helps to move the blood and lymph and reduce that sluggish lymph flow. It's, you know, it's getting everything flowing. Rebounding, you know, using a small trampoline is another really good thing you can do, because the lymphatic system is a closed non-pressure vessel that moves because of exercise or muscle contraction. Like we said before, it doesn't have a pump like your circulatory system. When the fluid becomes too thick in this type of, you know, sort of permeable membrane, which can happen when people are suffering from sort of chronic disease, this waste material cannot leave its cells, and so other bodily systems rely on them for cleansing themselves out, including your heart. Rebounding is jumping on a small trampoline, you know, and there are lots of videos about this, you know, so it's not hard to do. It's fairly inexpensive. I mean, the only issue is that you do need to have the space. If you've got a small house and you've got nowhere to store it, then that's probably an issue. It takes only 2 minutes of rebounding to flush the entire lymphatic system, whilst cleansing and strengthening cells and lymph nodes. A further benefit to the body is that during this brief time span, the white blood cells of the immune system triple in number and remain elevated for an hour, which is fantastic. These specialized cells play a major role in the body's defense against illness and disease. So a real good all-round thing to do. Now, looking at hydration and linseed tea, you know, we really should be thinking about drinking at least 1.5 to 2 litres of water daily. You know, ideally that's filtered water, more obviously if you're exercising and, you know, hot weather. But really the water should be warm, you know, slightly warm. If it's too hot, your body needs to cool it down. If it's too cold, then this shocks your system and the body has to warm it up before it can be used. So, you know, you just want to mix some of your cold water with some warm water, and that just really does help with hydration. So the best time to drink water is an hour before each meal, as this will help our digestion, as water is essential for making our digestive juices. But drinking too close to a meal or with a meal will dilute our digestive juices and make it hard for us to digest our food. A lot of people say, yeah, but I'm really thirsty when I eat. So if you are thirsty when you're eating, then this is a clear indicator that you haven't drunk enough water and your body is signaling that it needs that water for the digestion. So, you really want to be paying attention to that and then drinking more water in the day to sort of compensate and help that. You really want to be increasing your water intake slowly. If a lot of people say, oh, I drink a huge amount of water in the morning, first thing, and then they might not, they might just drink coffee and then they might not drink anything else into the evening. You want to be drinking these small amounts so that, that they're coming in throughout the day. And, you can add in a little bit of salt or some electrolytes, and this will help your body to hydrate better. So linseeds, which are also known as flax seeds, these are an excellent source of omega-3 fatty acids. They're also rich in fiber, but most importantly, they have an amazing mucilaginous quality that when made into a tea allows the body to hold on to water. There's a real recipe to this, so if you do want to make it, do ask me. It's not just pouring hot water onto the linseeds. Linseed tea is one of the most hydrating drinks you can have, coming a close second to water itself. This is because your body is made up of approximately 75 trillion cells, which need the best possible internal environment to live in to maintain optimal health. And two things crucial to cell health are oil and water. Linseed tea is an excellent way to reintroduce this oil and water into us, like right into our cells. So you're really getting that cellular hydration. Once our cells know that they are getting enough good water, good quality hydration, they can start to release toxins. As long as our routes of elimination are properly working, like we discussed earlier, lymph drainage helped by skin brushing, good liver detoxification processes, Epsom salt baths we'll talk about in a minute, and good elimination via the bowels twice a day. Really we want to be having at least 2 well-formed bowel movements a day. Like I said, if you want more information on all that, please email me. Castor oil packs, some of you may or may not have come across this, but castor oil is said to help the liver really detoxify naturally. The packs themselves can be placed on various parts of the body to aid healing and for pain relief. So for example, they can be used on the outside of the intestines to help alleviate constipation. They're very soothing and relaxing. But there is one main rule, and that is that if you want to use a castor oil pack on a part of your body, you always pack the liver first, because this will help the body to detoxify. So what you need for this is good quality castor oil. It specifically needs to say it's hexane free and organic. You want it to be in a glass bottle as well. You're then using some unbleached and dye-free wool or cotton, piece of cotton, a wraparound pack, or plastic wrap. That's what people used to use, but that's not really optimal anymore. You don't really want to have that plastic close to your skin sort of getting warm. You need a hot water bottle or a heating pad, glass container with a lid, that's to store it, the flannel or whatever you've used, because you can continue to use that more than once. And you want to be wearing sort of old clothes and have a towel sort of thing near you and stuff, because it can stain. It is a thick oil. Nowadays you can buy these different shaped packs. They're just on Amazon, so you can really target a part of your body with the castor oil. But like I said, you always want to be packing your liver, which is just on your right side under your ribs. You really want to be packing there first before you do anywhere else. If you've got joint pain or anything like that, it's a great pain reliever. Enemas and coffee enemas. These are a great gallbladder and liver flush. You know, they're excellent pain relieving because they're really flushing those toxins that potentially polluting your blood out of the body. You know, once these toxins are gone, the pain in the body is said to be relieved. You know, you want to be using, that's not just going to happen in one go though, this is over a period of time. When the body is detoxified, you can really experience that calmness and more vitality. You know, you're having more regular bowel movements, you're getting mental clarity, you know, less joint pain, less headaches. You know, if we, all these things are signals, you know, that there's something going on, that something's not quite right. You know, those sort of something's out of balance. You know, it's our body giving us, you know, the way we say it is that these aren't the issues, these symptoms, they're not the problem. You know, they're a reaction to the problem. And, you know, it goes back to what I was saying about, you know, finding that root cause. You know, is finding what's underneath that. Why are we getting headaches regularly? You know, the headache isn't the problem. Something else is going on that we need to figure out to then make sure that we're healing from that. You know, coffee enemas are also said to increase your body's levels of glutathione, which are the antioxidant your body makes. So, you know, you really want to increase those levels. Sweating and saunas, real fantastic way of getting out toxins. But, you know, I'm always telling people this, if you have a sauna, it is really imperative that you wipe that sweat away. So, you know, quite often people have a sauna, you know, it's quite a rage now. You get the mobile saunas, they might be near the sea. Often people have a sauna, they sweat, they run out, they go into the sea, and then they come back to get warm. They're sweating again, and then they're not wiping that and they're not washing it off. So, you know, yes, a certain amount will have come out the first time, but you really, if those toxins are coming out in your sweat, which they will be, you don't want that to then just sit on your skin and then be reabsorbed, you know. So I always say taking a small towel and wipe as you're sweating, you know, and obviously rinsing it off afterwards. And if you can do that without wearing deodorant, obviously that's going to be even more beneficial. And even better, have a skin brush before, clear away that dead skin, open up your pores, you know, get your lymph moving, you know, again, fantastic way to sort of increase those toxins coming out. Far infrared saunas, some of you may have heard of these. These are a different way of having a sauna. There, you can buy these to have at home. There's a picture in a minute that I'll show you. It's like going in a sleeping bag. Basically, they're different to a normal sauna because it's light that's heating you up, and it's heating you up slowly right from your core. And that light is also penetrating into your cells. And so because of that, it can help with a lot of more things. So specifically, it can help with inflammation, chronic fatigue. It can actually increase your vitamin D levels, which I think is fantastic. It can really support detoxification, aids in weight loss, helps chronic pain, can help fight infections, boost your immunity, increase brain function, improve sleep quality, increase your serotonin levels, improve your circulation, reduce stress, improve skin, and more. So, you know, lots of health claims for infrared saunas, and this is what it looks like. So, you know, you could just lie that in your bed. You're lying in it, you let it heat up, you lie in it, and then you're sweating out, basically. So you might lie in there for like 45 minutes, and, you know, you really do sweat quite a lot. I have got one and they are fantastic. I love it. I think it's a really great thing to have, and you can do it in the comfort of your own home. So a conventional sauna, you know, this is different from the far infrared saunas because they get a lot hotter. It's a different kind of heat, some, you know, dry, more humid heat, and therefore the sweating occurs at a much higher temperature than far infrared, you know, but they are still, you know, fantastic. They're still great at aiding in detoxification, really great at helping your circulation and reducing stress. But again, you know, really remembering to wipe that sweat away. And, you know, I couldn't mention saunas without mentioning this. You may be aware of the space in Burston. I do a lot of events there and a lot of work there, catering and stuff. And they are having a new monthly sauna event with Hotter Sauna. And the first one is on Friday, the 28th of Feb. £16 per person. You need to book though. So there's a link to that there, or have a look on the Spaces website. And also that night is a sound bath. They just happen to coincide at the same time. And this is with Sarah. I went to the one in January. If you haven't been to a sound bath, I highly recommend it. It is fantastic for stress relief. It's a really good thing to do. You know, if you haven't been before, you are lying down. You know, you can take your eye mask, take as much comfy stuff as you want, really go over the top. I take a duvet to lie on, you know, blankets, my pillows, my eye mask, you know, really invest in that relaxation and comfort. And Sarah is fantastic, and it is beautiful. You know, it really is a fantastic experience. So that's happening as well. And at £15 per person, I think that's just fantastic. You know, it's a really good thing. So check that out if you can. Epsom salt baths. Some of you might have come across these. You know, Epsom salts are quite often sold in supermarkets. The benefits include, you know, stress relief, relaxation, really relaxing. It's increasing magnesium levels. So, you know, it really is relaxing your body and your muscles. It can also aid in detoxification, help you sleep, really fantastic sleep aid, really, you know, really fantastic anti-inflammatory. And I would say buy online, you know, go on Amazon and buy like 10 kilos. I know that sounds crazy. If you can store it, it's fine. But rather than the piddly small bags, you know, that are a lot of money really for what you get, because you know, for it to be effective, you really need to be having a good 2 cups in the bath. And, you know, yeah, maybe add in some like natural essential oils, but don't use any you know, don't wash your hair, don't wash basically when you're doing this. If you need to if you're having a bath because you need to wash, have a shower or something first and wash your hair and stuff, and then use that bath just to have the Epsom salt in, so you're not, you know, polluting it is a harsh word, but with other things. Basically you're just getting the effect of the Epsom salts. Juicing, you know, green juice is an excellent way to replenish your body and detox. You know, you want to be using a masticating juicer. This is one that juices things slowly, so it's not heating up and killing those enzymes in the veg and all the nutrients and stuff. And really, if you're juicing, you really do want to have organic veg, because you don't want to be having a pesticide drink, you know, soupy drink. That's not going to be good. This is, you know, that's what I have. This is an example of a masticating juicer. So, you know, it's going around slowly, and yeah, it's not heating it up. Fasting, a really big thing that people are doing nowadays, can be beneficial, cannot be beneficial, but, you know, really there have been a lot of studies, and really the studies are showing, I mean, I'm sure lots of people would dispute this, but really the studies do say that having a fast of around 14 to 16 hours is the most beneficial. You know, some people do go for the sort of 48, 72, you know, they're looking at autophagy and stuff like that, and cell, you know, killing cells and stuff like this. It's getting a bit, you know, technical. Yeah, do look into it how you will, but I think, you know, studies are showing 14 to 16 hours. So, you know, what's that look like? That's finishing your meal by 7 and then breaking your fast between 9 and 11. You know, and benefits of fasting, you know, it is going to help your digestion. It is going to help your gut health, because it is giving that your body that rest from, you know, our body has the capability to heal. So if there are issues, e.g. in your gut, you know, if it's not having to digest, it's not working, then it can do other things like healing. So, you know, it really can help with stuff like that. It can help with blood sugar control. You know, it can help to lower inflammation. You know, a lot of people say it's very anti-aging and increases longevity. you know, can improve your mental clarity, help, you know, with weight management. Like I said, stimulates autophagy, which is, you know, the clearing up of dead cells. You can help with detoxification, but, you know, you want to maybe think about putting in something, you know, if you're getting sort of detoxification reactions, what would that look like? Headaches, things coming out in your skin. Maybe you want to be adding in something that's going to bind those toxins, like there are specific products, but also, you know, something like charcoal or something like that to help it take out your body a bit more efficiently. And it can also boost your immune system. So, you know, when we're thinking about detoxification, you know, we want to be thinking about what our livers need. And, you know, I am often asked about cleanses and, you know, detox programs and juice, you know, sort of juice fasts and stuff like this. And the biggest red flag for me is that your liver, one of the main things it needs is protein. It needs those amino acids to function optimally and do all the processes. You know, the liver is an amazing organ. In a minute, I'm going to show you a picture of all the things it needs to go through, all the different phases of detoxification that your liver goes through. And the main thing it needs is protein. So if you are, you know, if you are mega healthy and you have been detoxing for years and you are super, super healthy and you really, you know, which is a full-time job, let's face it, then yes, maybe you could do a juice fast and it wouldn't, you know, it would be fine. But the majority of us aren't like that. You know, we do, like I said, live around toxins. We aren't all eating organic all the time. You know, it's hard to do that. So we are going to have a certain amount of stuff to detoxify. And, you know, really, you know, if your liver is detoxifying properly, you shouldn't be able to feel it. You shouldn't get a headache. You shouldn't get skin rashes and breakouts on your face. You know, you shouldn't know about it because your liver is being supported properly and it is doing its job. You know, when people go on these things and they get their headaches and all this stuff, they know, and they're like, oh, I'm detoxing. Well, you shouldn't know. You shouldn't know that you're detoxing if it's happening properly. Yeah, so like I've put here, you know, if you are a toxic person, you know, and that sounds harsh, but, you know, a lot of us do have a lot of toxins in us, whether we've tried to, you know, live healthy or not. It's just a fact of life. We can also look at doing hair mineral analysis. That's something I use in my clinics. And, you know, also taking binders, which, you know, can be helpful in this scenario, especially if you've got high levels of heavy metals. So here's a lovely picture of, now don't feel like you have to even understand what this means. I'm putting this in because it just shows how all the nutrients and extracts and things that our livers need to go through these different phases of detoxification, you know. So yeah, that just goes to show. So a few little takeaways here, you know, really don't try everything at once, you know, pick something, you know, try that, you know, start adding in a couple of organic things into your food, you know, get rid of one toxic cleaning product, you know, use an eco thing in your dishwasher, you know, don't do everything at once. You don't feel like you have to do that, you know. It's just about, you know, implementing these things one by one and just being aware. It's being aware that these things are having an impact. You know, you really want to be thinking about your stress before you're trying to detoxify. You know, we really want to be calm and not putting that extra stress on our body. You know, want to be looking at binders potentially. You know, if you want more information on that, please feel free to contact me. And, you know, really we want to be making sure those elimination pathways are clear. You know, you don't want to be doing a detox if you've got constipation. You know, that's just an absolute no. And, you know, also if you've got any chronic health conditions, you really need to be talking to your doctor before trying anything. So our next webinar is in March, and that is about essential nutrients for your immune system. I will send out this in when I send out the recording and in my newsletter. So yeah, if you'd like to sign up to that, that would be great. And this is a event I've got again at the Space in Burston. It's not till May, but if this is something that you'd be interested in going to, then yeah, please sign up or email me for some more information. Also going to be doing a fermenting demo there as well, if that's something that you're interested in. And thank you for signing up. Thank you for listening. And if you've got any questions at any point, please just email me or go onto my website. We've also got a Share the Health Facebook group, for health info and tips if you want to sign up to that, and details about events and things. Right, so our little secret bonus, this is where I'm going to spin a virtual wheel, so to speak, and the winner can get a free health review with me or £50 off any of my consultation packages. So I'm going to just change my sharing. All your names are in there, so we're just going to do a little spin. And it's Chloe. Chloe has won. I think it is your lucky beginning of the year, Chloe, to win again, because Chloe has already won a consultation with me in another thing we were doing on Instagram. So well done, Chloe. That's fantastic. I'm so chuffed for you. Okay. So that is the end. I hope you've had really enjoyed it, and like I said, if you've got any questions at any point, please do just email me. I'm always happy to answer questions, and I hope to see you at the next one. Okay.